Ethan Walker sat in the corner of the University of Wisconsin library, staring at his laptop screen. It was a little after 2 p.m., and he was trying to finish a presentation for an internship at the Green Bay News. His third year of media and communications was intense, and this internship could be his ticket to real journalism. He'd rewritten the slide about digital media 3 times already, but he still wasn't satisfied. The library was buzzing with the whispers of students and the rustling of pages, but Ethan, immersed in his work, was barely aware of his surroundings. His fingers were running quickly across the keyboard when he heard footsteps behind him. Someone walked past, and Ethan caught a glimpse of long blonde hair. He didn't think anything of it until he heard a loud thud. A stack of books crashed to the floor behind his desk, and one of them, heavy as a brick, hit his laptop. The screen flickered, and the device landed on the table with a thud. "Shit," Ethan blurted out. He grabbed the laptop, checking to see if the screen was cracked. Luckily, it looked intact, but the lid was slightly bent in the corner. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," a female voice called out. Ethan looked up to see a girl scrambling to gather books from the floor. Her long blonde hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, and she was wearing a black Nirvana t-shirt and faded jeans. She looked like she'd just stepped out of her dorm, but her panicked brown eyes immediately caught his attention. "Hey, it's okay," Ethan said, trying to smile, though inside he was annoyed. This laptop was his only working tool, and any breakdown could be a problem. "It's just, maybe next time we shouldn't have a book meltdown near the tech?" The girl stood up, clutching several textbooks to her chest. Her cheeks were flushed. "I really didn't mean to," she said, looking at the laptop. "Does it work? I didn't break it, did I? Oh, I'm so clumsy." Ethan clicked a couple of keys, and the screen lit up. The presentation was still open, though one slide was out of order. "I think he's alive," he said, letting out a sigh of relief. "But, this was my only chance not to fail the internship. If it breaks, I'll probably be writing notes on napkins." She laughed nervously, shifting the books in her hands. "Please tell me he's okay. I can pay for repairs if something's wrong. I'm Leela, by the way. Leela Morgan." "Ethan Walker," he said, leaning back in his chair. "And honestly, I don't know what's wrong with him yet. I'll have to check. But if he's dead, I'll come to you for a new one." Leela placed the books on the nearby table and leaned over to take a closer look at the laptop. "Seriously, let me see," she said. "I didn't mean to drop it. It's just that these marketing textbooks weigh a ton, and I must have folded them badly." Ethan moved the laptop a little further away, playfully protecting it. "No way, you've already given him a stress test. Let me figure it out myself. But, you could compensate for the moral damage. For example, buy me a coffee." Leela straightened up, crossing her arms. "Coffee?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Are you kidding? I just almost ruined your life, and you want coffee?" "Well, it's the least you can do," Ethan said, grinning. "I'm sitting here trying to be the next big journalist, and you almost took my tool away. Coffee is the bare minimum." She shook her head, but the corners of her lips twitched into a smile. "You're impudent, Ethan Walker," she said, "but I'll think about it. Only if you can prove the laptop is intact." "Deal," he replied. "Let me check it out right now. If it works, you owe me coffee. If not, I'll make you carry my books for the rest of the semester." Leela laughed, and her tension eased a little. "Okay, that's fair," she said. "But I'm not kidding about fixing it. If it's broken, I'll pay. I have some money from my part-time job." Ethan opened a couple of programs to make sure everything was working. The screen didn't glitch, the sound worked, and the presentation loaded without a problem. "Looks like you got off easy, Leela Morgan," he said, closing his laptop. "But I'm still waiting for that coffee." She rolled her eyes, but her smile widened. "You're impossible," she said. "Listen, I have to run to a lecture, but I'm serious about the repairs. If something's wrong, find me. I'm usually here in the library or in the marketing building." "Oh, I'll find you," Ethan said with a wink. "Don't think you can run away after this." Leela gathered her books, still a little embarrassed. Sorry again, she said, retreating toward the exit. And maybe I'll see you. She turned and walked quickly to the door, leaving Ethan at the desk. He watched her until she disappeared behind the shelves. His laptop seemed to have survived the impact, but Ethan's thoughts were no longer on the presentation, but on this girl with brown eyes and a Nirvana t-shirt. Ethan shook his head and went back to work. He opened the presentation, but it was hard to concentrate. Leela Morgan. The name kept popping into his head. He wasn't the type to fall head over heels for a girl, but something about her awkward sincerity caught his attention. Maybe it was her laugh, or the way she tried to make amends. He didn't know. Hey, Ethan, you alive? A voice called. It was his friend Zach, who had plopped down in the chair opposite him. Zach was in the same year, but he liked parties more than studying. Barely, Ethan said, leaning back. I almost lost my laptop just now. Some girl dropped her books on it. Zach whistled. Seriously? And what, you scolded her? Not exactly, Ethan said, grinning. She apologized like the world was ending. She even offered to pay for the repairs. Ha, that's cute, Zach said, opening his bottle of water. Who is she? Do you know her? Leela Morgan, sophomore, marketing, Ethan said. Never met her before, but she's cool. Zach narrowed his eyes. Cool. Wow, Walker, are you blushing? Is this love at first sight? Shut up, Ethan snapped, throwing a pencil at him. I just said she's fine, and she owes me coffee. Coffee? Zach laughed. You really extorted coffee from a girl who almost broke your laptop? Classic. Is she even cute? Ethan shrugged, trying to look unconcerned. Well, she's not ugly, he said. Blonde hair, brown eyes, Nirvana t-shirt. She looks like she doesn't care about fashion, but it works. Wow, you really got a good look at her, Zach teased. Listen, if she's a sophomore in marketing, I might know who you're talking about. There's this Leela who always hangs out in the library. I heard she's not the type to take a hit on easily. So good luck, Romeo. I wasn't hitting on you, Ethan said, opening his laptop. I just want her to pay for the damages. And the coffee. Yeah, right, Zach said, standing up. Okay, I have to get to the seminar. Keep me posted if she agrees to your coffee. And don't forget about the presentation. You don't want to screw up in front of the Green Bay News. I won't screw up, Ethan muttered, returning to the slides. Zach left, and Ethan tried to focus. But every time he looked at the screen, Leela kept flashing before his eyes, her panic, her smile, her promise to pay for the repairs. He found himself wondering how he could find her again. She said she often hung out at the library or the marketing building. Maybe he should just happen to end up there. He shook his head, forcing himself to get back to work. The presentation was more important. The internship was more important. But still, the thought swirled in his head. What if she actually showed up with coffee? He chuckled. That would be funny. Ethan saved the file and decided to take a break. He stood up, stretched, and walked over to the coffee machine in the corner of the library. While he waited for the machine to pour him a black coffee, he noticed a girl at the next table. She was leafing through a magazine, and for a second he thought it was Leela. But no, this one had dark hair. He sighed. He should have thought less about her. Hey, you're the guy with the laptop, right? A voice called out. Ethan turned around to see another student who had been sitting nearby when Leela dropped her books. Yeah, it's me, he said. What, you want to drop something on my table too? She laughed. No, I just saw that girl almost destroy your laptop. She was in a panic. Do you know her? We just met, Ethan said. She's Leela. Said she'd pay for repairs if anything was broken. Oh, Leela Morgan, the girl said. She's in marketing. I hear she's smart, but a little clumsy. No offense. Yeah, I noticed, Ethan said, picking up his coffee. But she seems okay. Well, good luck with her, the girl said, returning to her magazine. And with the laptop. Ethan returned to his desk, sipping coffee. He opened his laptop again, but his thoughts kept returning to Leela. He didn't know why she had stuck in his mind. Maybe it was because she didn't try to be someone she wasn't. Most of the girls he'd met at college were either too focused on their looks or were faking it to impress. But Leela, she was just herself, even in that stupid shirt. He checked the time. He still had a couple of hours before the presentation was due. He decided he'd finish the slides and then maybe try to find Leela. Not that he was going to stalk her. Just check if she was serious about the renovation. And the coffee. Ethan smiled, imagining her coming in with a cup of coffee and apologizing again. That would be funny. He clicked on the next slide, but in his mind he was already wondering where in the marketing building he might accidentally run into the sophomore with the brown eyes. Leela, meanwhile, ran out of the library, still blushing with embarrassment. She'd almost broken some guy's laptop, and this guy, Ethan, was even joking instead of being angry. She shook her head as she made her way across campus to her building. Her marketing lecture started in 15 minutes, and she was already running late. "You have to be careful," she muttered under her breath, clutching the books to her chest. But deep down, she couldn't help but smile. Ethan Walker. He was ... interesting ... and maybe not so bad, if you don't count his impudence with that coffee. She quickened her pace, deciding that she would find him later to make sure the laptop was okay. For now, she needed to focus on the lecture. But somewhere in the back of her mind, a thought was spinning. What if he really did come for his coffee? Ethan Walker sat in his dorm room, replaying the events of the previous day in his head. Leela Morgan, a sophomore marketing major, had nearly smashed his laptop in the library, and instead of getting mad, he joked and asked for coffee. He still couldn't believe he'd let her go so easily. Today was a new day, and he decided it was time to take action. The rumors Zach had spread about Leela being unattainable and resistant to advances had only piqued his interest. If she really was like that, he wanted to know what was behind it. Ethan glanced at his watch. It was noon. He had a window before his next class, and he was expecting a call from the Green Bay News about an internship. The presentation he'd been working on when Leela dropped her books had worked. He'd sent it off last night and gotten an email inviting him to an interview. This was his chance, but thoughts of Leela were distracting. Her brown eyes, slightly unkempt hair, and that Nirvana t-shirt wouldn't leave his mind. He opened his laptop to check that it was okay after the shock from yesterday. The screen turned on without a problem, and Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. It was time to find Leela. She said she often hung out in the library or the marketing building. The library was closer, but Ethan figured the marketing building was more likely at this time of day. He grabbed his backpack, shoved his laptop in, and headed for the exit. "Hey, where are you going?" his roommate, Kyle, called out, not looking up from his video game. "Find one girl," Ethan answered, throwing his backpack over his shoulder. Kyle paused the game and turned around. "Seriously? Who are you? You don't usually chase girls." "Leela Morgan," Ethan said, trying to sound casual. "She almost broke my laptop yesterday. She owes me coffee." Kyle laughed. "Coffee? Is this your new way of picking up? And who's Leela Morgan? I haven't heard of her." "Sophomore marketing," Ethan said. "Blonde hair, brown eyes, wears rock band t-shirts. Cool." "She's cool," Kyle mimicked. "Listen, if she's a sophomore, be careful. Those marketing girls know how to screw with your head. Good luck, brother." "I don't need luck," Ethan said, grinning. "I'm just going to get my coffee." He left the dorm and headed for the marketing building, a 10-minute walk across campus. The weather was cool, a typical Wisconsin fall day, and Ethan zipped up his denim jacket. As he walked, he thought about what he would say to Leela. Should he just remind her about coffee, ask about her laptop? He didn't want to seem pushy, but he wasn't going to pass up the chance. The marketing building was bustling with students, some with laptops, some with coffee from the campus coffee shop. Ethan walked past several classrooms, peering into windows, but didn't see Leela. He was about to leave when he spotted a familiar figure at the bulletin board. Leela, still wearing her Nirvana t-shirt and jeans, was reading a flyer. Ethan took a deep breath and walked over. "Hey, Leila Morgan," he said, stopping next to her. "I didn't think I'd find you so quickly." Leila turned around, her eyes widening in surprise. "Ethan," she said, looking away from the flyer, "what are you doing here?" "I came for my coffee," he said, crossing his arms and smiling. "Remember, you promised to compensate for the moral damages for my laptop." Leela rolled her eyes, but her lips twitched into a smile. "Are you serious?" she said. "I thought you were joking. But since you're here, how's the laptop? Is everything working?" "For now, yes," Ethan said, patting his backpack. "But I'm still checking. If it glitches, I'll get back to you with the bill." "Oh, please," said Leela, stepping away from the board. "I already said I'd pay for repairs if something was broken. But coffee? You're overdoing it." "Overreacting," Ethan said, walking down the hallway next to her. "You almost ruined my career as a journalist. Coffee is the bare minimum." Leela stopped and turned to face him, crossing her arms. "A career in journalism?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Are you writing for the New York Times already?" "Not yet," Ethan said, grinning. "But I'm getting there. I have an interview for an internship at the Green Bay News, and your books almost ruined my presentation." Leela laughed, shaking her head. "Okay, you're being dramatic," she said. "But fine, I'll think about coffee, just because you didn't yell at me yesterday." "Scream?" Ethan said. "I'm not a monster. Besides, you looked like you were about to cry. Didn't mean to make things worse." "I didn't mean to cry," Leela said, blushing slightly. It wasn't my best day. And then there was that laptop. I really didn't mean to set you up." "I believe you," Ethan said, softening his tone. "Look, let's do it this way. I'm taking a break at 3 today. There's a coffee shop in the main building, Bean House. We'll meet there, and you can make up for it." Leela looked at him, narrowing her eyes. "You're really not giving up, are you?" she said. "Okay, I have a lecture until 2:30, but then I'm free. Just don't expect me to buy you some expensive latte." "Black coffee," Ethan said, holding up his hands. "I'm just a guy. Deal?" "Okay," Leela said, smiling. "But if you start asking for donuts too, I'm leaving." "No donuts, I promise," Ethan said, laughing. "Until 3 then, Leila Morgan." She nodded and walked towards the audience, throwing over her shoulder. "Don't be late, Ethan Walker." Ethan watched her disappear through the door and felt his heart beat a little faster. He had done it. He had asked her out for coffee, and she had said yes. It might not have been a date, but it was a step forward. He turned and headed out the door, feeling a little more confident. Back at his dorm, Ethan decided to prepare for his interview. He opened an email from the Green Bay News that said 10 a.m. the next day. He needed to review his notes and maybe put on something more formal than jeans and a t-shirt. He could already picture himself telling the editor about his journalism plans, but his thoughts kept returning to Leela. "You look too pleased," Kyle said as Ethan walked into the room. "Found your girl?" "Yeah," Ethan said, throwing his backpack on the bed. "She agreed to coffee. 3 o'clock today." Kyle whistled. "You're quick," he said. "And is she really as cool as you said?" "She's normal," Ethan said, trying not to sound too enthusiastic. "She's just different, not trying to be someone else." "Wow, you're already in love," Kyle teased, returning to his game. "Don't screw up on the coffee, and don't forget about the internship. That's more important than girls." "I remember everything," Ethan said, opening his laptop. He started looking through his notes for the interview, but after 5 minutes he found himself thinking about what to wear to meet Leela. Nothing too fancy, but not like he just rolled out of bed. By 2 o'clock, Ethan was ready. He had put on a clean black t-shirt, jeans, and his favorite denim jacket. He glanced in the mirror, smoothed his hair, and decided that he looked okay. It wasn't like he wanted to impress her. Or did he? The bean house was crowded, but Ethan found a table by the window. He arrived 5 minutes early and ordered a coffee so he wouldn't look like he was waiting for Leela to pay. While he was waiting, his phone rang. It was Zach. "Hey, where are you?" Zach asked. "I was in the media building. I thought you'd be here." "At the coffee shop," Ethan replied, "meeting Leela." "Wow, are you serious?" Zach said. "Going on a date already? You work fast." "It's not a date," Ethan said, rolling his eyes. "She just owes me coffee for the laptop." "Yeah, sure," Zach said, laughing. "Okay, keep me posted. And don't forget about the interview tomorrow. You don't want to ruin it over a girl." "I won't ruin it," Ethan said. "See you later." He hung up and noticed Leela walking into the coffee shop. She was wearing the same Nirvana t-shirt, but instead of jeans, she was wearing black leggings. She looked around, spotted Ethan, and walked toward him. "You're early," she said, putting her backpack on a chair. "Is this to make sure I pay?" "Maybe," Ethan said, grinning. "But I already ordered some for myself, so you'll have to get something for yourself." Leela shook her head and went to the counter. A few minutes later, she returned with a small cup of coffee and sat down opposite. "There," she said, taking a sip. "I've officially atoned for my guilt. Are we even now?" "Not so fast," Ethan said. "I'm still checking the laptop. If it crashes, you owe me more than coffee." "You're unbearable," Leela said, but her eyes were laughing. "Okay, tell me about this internship. Do you really think you'll become a great journalist?" "Why not?" Ethan said, leaning back in his chair. "I've already passed the first screening. The interview is tomorrow. If everything works out, I'll be writing news for the Green Bay News. And then, who knows, maybe I'll get to the national publications." Leela nodded, looking impressed. "Not bad," she said. "I thought you were just joking about your career. What do you want to write about? Politics? Sports?" "I haven't decided yet," Ethan said. "I'll probably start with local news. But I like digging into the facts, finding things that other people don't notice. What about you? Marketing is what? Advertising and all that?" "Something like that," Leela said. "I like figuring out how to get an idea across to people. Plus, I love music, so maybe someday I'll work with bands or festivals. But for now, I'm just trying to pass all my exams." "Music, huh?" Ethan said. "So Nirvana? You're a grunge fan?" "Not only," Leela said, smiling. "I like everything from rock to indie. Nirvana is just classic. What do you listen to?" "Honestly," Ethan said, "anything. But if I had to pick, I'd probably go with the Red Hot Chili Peppers or something old like The Doors." "Not bad," said Leela. "I didn't expect you to have taste." "Hey, I'm full of surprises," Ethan said, laughing. They chatted for another half hour, jumping from music to school to campus gossip. Ethan noticed that Leela was relaxing, her laughter growing louder, her responses less guarded. She was witty, with a touch of sarcasm that he liked. As they finished their coffee, Leela glanced at her phone. "Damn, I have to run," she said, standing up. "I have another lecture." But that wasn't that bad. "Not so bad," Ethan said, feigning hurt. "Admit it, a major day." "Dream on," Leela said, throwing her backpack over her shoulder. "But maybe we'll see each other again, if your laptop doesn't die." "Oh, I'll see you there," Ethan said, "and I'm looking forward to hearing about how you're becoming a big marketer." She smiled and headed towards the door, waving goodbye. Ethan Walker couldn't believe that it had only been 2 weeks since they'd first met in the library, and he was already on his first date with Leela Morgan. They'd been texting almost every day since that coffee at the Bean House, and Ethan had worked up the courage to suggest they go see a local indie band playing on campus. Leela had agreed, and now he was waiting for her outside the small club, nervously checking his phone. It was 7 o'clock, and a crowd of students was already gathering outside. "Hey, Ethan," Leela's voice called out. He turned around to see her walking across the parking lot. She was wearing the same black Nirvana t-shirt, denim jacket, and dark jeans. Her blonde hair was down, and she looked like she wasn't trying, but she was still catching the eyes of the guys around her. "You're just in time," Ethan said, smiling. "I thought you'd change your mind." "Change your mind?" Leela said, coming closer. "I promised. Besides, I heard these guys are pretty good. What are they called?" "Lakeside Echo," Ethan answered, opening the door to the club. "My friend Zach said they're like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. We'll see." "That's a high bar," Leela said as she stepped inside. "If they screw up, I'll blame you." "Fair enough," Ethan said, laughing. "But if you like it, you owe me a beer." "Beer?" Leela asked, raising an eyebrow. "You're already switching from coffee to beer? You're getting cheeky, Walker." They took a place near the stage where the musicians were already setting up. The club was small, dimly lit, and smelled of spilled beer. Ethan ordered them both sodas, deciding the beer could wait. "So," Leela said, taking a sip from her can, "tell me how your internship went. You started this week, right?" "Yeah," Ethan said, nodding. "The Green Bay News. Just fact-checking and writing short pieces, but it's been great. The editor said I have good writing yesterday. Maybe I'll get something more serious soon." "Not bad," Leela said, looking at him. "Do you really want to be a journalist? Or is it just so you don't have to work in an office?" "I do," Ethan said. "I like finding the truth. It sounds pompous, but it's true. What about you? Is marketing your lifelong passion?" "I don't know," Leela said with a shrug. "I like coming up with ideas, but I'd like to work with something cool, like music festivals. Or maybe brands that do something different." "Cool," Ethan said. "I can picture you at some fest where you're running the show and I'm reporting." Leela laughed. "Yeah, and you'll whine that it's too loud," she said. The concert began, and the band began playing energetic rock with a funk edge. Leela bobbed her head to the music, and Ethan looked at her more than at the stage. She sang along to the chorus of one of the songs, and he noticed the guy next to her glance at her. Ethan felt a twinge of irritation, but brushed it off. "They're really okay," Leela said when the group paused. "You were right." "I'm always right," Ethan said, grinning. "So beer?" "Dream on," Leela replied, nudging him with her elbow. "But maybe next time." After the concert, they went outside where the air was cool. Ethan offered to walk her back to her dorm. "You don't have to," Leela said, putting her hands in her jacket pockets. "I'll get there myself." "I know," Ethan said, "but I want to. Besides, you might drop something on me again." Leela rolled her eyes but smiled. "Okay, let's go," she said. They chatted the entire way, discussing music and campus gossip. At the door of her dorm, Leela stopped. "It was fun," she said. "Thanks for inviting me." "Please," Ethan said. "Maybe we can do this again sometime?" "Maybe," Leela said, looking at him. "Good night, Ethan." She left, and Ethan stood there feeling that this was better than he expected. A couple of days later, Ethan asked Leela to go for a walk by Lake Mendota, not far from campus. It was a Saturday, and the weather was warm for October. Leela showed up wearing a sweater and jeans, with her hair in a braid. "Is this officially a second date?" she asked as they walked along the path by the water. "A date?" Ethan said, feigning surprise. "I just thought you needed some fresh air after all your marketing lectures." "Yeah, right," Leela said, laughing. "You just want me to buy you something again." "Guilty," Ethan said, raising his hands. "But seriously, have you ever come here? The lake is awesome." "Sometimes," Leela said, looking at the water. "I like to run along this path. It helps me take my mind off things." "Run," Ethan said. "I thought you just dropped books and drank coffee." "Ha ha, very funny," said Leela, nudging him with her shoulder. "And what do you do besides write your notes?" "Well, I played basketball in high school," Ethan said. "But after my knee injury, I can't do it anymore. Now I just go to the gym sometimes, and write, of course." "Basketball?" Leela said, raising an eyebrow. "I didn't expect that. You don't look like an athlete." "Hey, I was cool," Ethan said, grinning. Could have played college ball if it weren't for my knee. Dream on, Leela said. But that's cool. What do you write besides work? Stories? Poems? Poetry, Ethan said, laughing. No, that's not my thing. I blog sometimes, but mostly for myself. About music, movies, stuff. Show me sometime, said Leela. I'm interested. Only if you show me your marketing projects, Ethan said. Okay? We have a deal, said Leela, smiling. They stopped at a bench, and Ethan noticed two guys walking past glance at Leela. One whispered something to the other, and they laughed. Ethan frowned, but Leela didn't seem to notice. What are you thinking about? She asked, sitting down on the bench. Nothing, Ethan said, sitting down next to her. It's just, are you always this attention-grabbing? Leela looked at him, surprised. What do you mean? She asked. Well, Ethan said with a shrug. You're pretty. Guys look at you all the time, like those two just now. Leela rolled her eyes. Oh, please, she said. They were probably just talking about my t-shirt. And anyway, I don't care. I'm used to it. Used to it, Ethan said. So it's normal for you. Yeah, Leela said. It was the same at school. But I don't pay attention. Most guys are just empty. They say the same thing to pick you up. And me? Ethan asked, grinning. Am I empty too? Not yet, Leela said, smiling. But if you start saying that I'm the most beautiful girl in the world, I'll leave. I'll remember, Ethan said, laughing. They sat by the lake until sunset, chatting about childhood, favorite movies, and plans for the future. Ethan walked Leela to her dorm, and this time she suggested meeting again. There's a pizzeria downtown, she said. Mama Rosa. Do you want to go there on Friday? You're asking me out on a date? Ethan said, feigning shock. Call it laptop compensation, Leela said with a wink. At 7. At 7, Ethan said. Friday night was their third date, and Ethan felt like he could think about nothing but Leela. He arrived at Mama Rosa's a little early, taking a table by the window. Leela showed up in a black sweater and jeans, her hair down, and Ethan found himself thinking that she looked the best in the place. You're early again, said Leela, sitting down opposite. Is this your style? I don't want you to run away, Ethan said, grinning. Plus, I'm hungry. What's your favorite kind of pizza? Pepperoni, Leela said, opening the menu. But I don't mind trying something new. What are you getting? Margarita, Ethan said. Simple, but it always works. Boring, Leela said teasingly. Okay, let's have half pepperoni, half margarita. Coming, Ethan said, motioning to the waiter. While they waited for the order, Leela told them about her last marketing lecture, where she was given a project to create an advertising campaign for a fictitious brand. I came up with an idea for a music festival, she said, but my bandmate wants to advertise an energy drink. It's so corny. Tell him the festival is cooler, Ethan said. You can talk anyone into it. Not just anyone, said Leela, looking at him. You, for example, still think that I owe you coffee. Because you have to, Ethan said, laughing. But I'm willing to forgive you if the pizza tastes good. The pizza was good, and they ate, joking around. Ethan noticed the waiter's eyes lingering on Leela a couple of times, and it irritated him. He tried not to show it, but Leela seemed to sense it. What's wrong? She asked, taking a bite. Nothing, Ethan said, looking away. It's just, that waiter is staring at you. Leela looked at the counter where the waiter was taking the order. Really? She said. I didn't even notice. Ethan, relax. He's just doing his job. Yeah, sure, Ethan said, trying to smile. It's just weird that everyone's looking at you. Not all, said Leela, leaning closer. I, for example, look at you, and I'm starting to like you. Ethan froze, not expecting this. Really? He said, trying not to look too surprised. It's true, Leela said, smiling. You're funny, you don't pretend, and you're not afraid to say what you think. That's rare. Well, you're not bad either, Ethan said, feeling his face flush. Especially when you don't drop books on my laptop. Leela laughed, and the rest of the evening passed easily. They finished the pizza, ordered more soda, and chatted until the pizza place began to empty. Ethan walked Leela back to her dorm, and she paused at the door. "That was awesome," she said. "Thank you." "Please," Ethan said. "See you again?" "Of course," said Leela, smiling. She left, and Ethan returned to his room feeling like he was falling in love. He couldn't stop thinking about her smile, her laugh, her words about how he meant like. Later that night, Ethan was lying in bed when he heard his phone beep. It was a text from Zach. "How was your date?" Ethan started to type a reply, but stopped when he saw Leela video calling her friend. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but he could hear snippets of their conversation through her open dorm window. "He's special, Kate," Leela whispered, smiling. "Not like the others. I mean it." Ethan smiled, feeling his heart beat faster. Ethan Walker parked his silver Honda Accord in the driveway of their Green Bay home. It was 6 p.m. on a Friday, and he had just finished work at the office of the online news platform, the Green Bay Post. The house, a two-story affair with a neat lawn and a swing set in the backyard, was his and Leela's pride and joy. They had bought it 3 years ago, shortly after the birth of Liam, their son, now 5. Ethan turned off the engine, grabbed his backpack containing his laptop, and walked into the house, hearing laughter coming from the kitchen. "Dad!" Liam yelled, running around the corner. His blonde hair, inherited from Leela, was disheveled, and there was a ketchup stain on his t-shirt. He ran toward Ethan, hugging his legs. "Hey, champ," Ethan said, picking up his son. "What's the mess? Have you been eating pizza without me again?" "It's not pizza, it's pasta," Liam said, giggling. "Mom said I could add ketchup." Ethan laughed and carried Liam into the kitchen, where Leela Morgan, his wife, stood at the stove, stirring a saucepan. She was wearing jeans and a black t-shirt with a logo of an old rock festival on it, and her blonde hair was pulled back into a messy bun. Even after 10 years of dating, Ethan still stopped when he looked at her. She looked just like she had in those days at university, only now there were slight crinkles around her eyes when she smiled. "Hi," Leela said, turning around. "You're early. I thought you'd be stuck in the office until nightfall." "Decided to run away," Ethan said, setting Liam down and kissing Leela on the cheek. "Smells good. What do we have?" "Spaghetti with meat sauce," Leela replied, returning to the stove. "And a salad, if you don't whine about it being too green." "I'm not whining," Ethan said, opening the refrigerator and pulling out a bottle of water. "It's just that greens aren't food." "Dad, greens are good for you," Liam said, sitting at the kitchen table and waving a plastic spoon. "Mom said I'd be big like you if I ate lettuce." "Listen to your mother," Ethan said, winking at his son. "She's always right. Well, almost always." Leela snorted without turning around. "Almost," she said. "Remind me who wanted to buy that horrible car with the rusty bumper." "It was classic," Ethan said, sitting down at the table. "You just don't understand vintage." "Vintage that would have broken in a week," Leela replied, turning off the stove. "Liam, go wash your hands. Dinner's ready." Liam jumped off the chair and ran to the bathroom, and Ethan looked at Leela. "How was your day?" he asked. "Did you close any big contracts?" "Not really," Leela said, setting the plates on the table. "But I finished the campaign for that eco-friendly clothing startup. They're happy, so maybe they'll give me more work. What about you? Did you write something that's going to break the internet?" "Not yet," Ethan said, smiling. "There was a story about the new stadium today. Nothing special, but the editor complimented me. He said I have a knack for headlines." "That's because you're good at exaggerating," Leela said, sitting down across from him. "Remember how you wrote on your blog that our first vacation was an epic adventure? We just went to the lake and forgot our tent." "That was the adventure," Ethan said, laughing. "We slept in the car. Classic." Liam returned, wiping his hands on his pants and climbed onto the chair. "Dad, tell me about the stadium," he said. "Are the Packers going to play there?" "Not really," Ethan said, serving his son spaghetti. "It's for the local team, but maybe there'll be a big game there someday. Want to go to a game?" "Yes," Liam said, waving his fork. "Mom, are you coming?" "If there's pizza in there," Leela said with a wink. "Otherwise, I'm out." Dinner proceeded in the usual rhythm. Liam chatted about his day at preschool. Leela talked about a coworker who had forgotten to mail an important email, and Ethan shared gossip from the newsroom. Their marriage, after 7 years, was stable. They had learned to balance work, raising Liam, and spending time with each other. Ethan was a well-known journalist at the Green Bay Post, his articles on local events and investigations garnering thousands of views. Leela was thriving at a digital marketing agency, creating campaigns for startups and big brands. But sometimes Ethan felt a twinge of jealousy when he noticed the way others looked at Leela. After dinner, Leela cleared away the dishes and Ethan helped Liam with his homework, a drawing for kindergarten. "Dad, it's a dinosaur," Liam said, holding up a sheet of green scribbles. "Cool dinosaur," Ethan said. "What's his name?" "Rex," Liam said. "He's eating pizza." "My man," Ethan said, laughing. Leela walked into the living room, drying her hands on a towel. "Liam, it's time to brush your teeth," she said, "and no whining." "But I draw," Liam said, frowning. "The drawing can wait," said Leela. "Come on, march to the bathroom." Liam sighed but obeyed, running down the stairs. Ethan looked at Leela. "You're strict today," he said, getting up from the sofa. "Someone has to be an adult," Leela replied, smiling. "Go make sure he doesn't get toothpaste on the mirror." Ethan went up to get Liam, and Leela went back into the kitchen. When Ethan returned, she was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling through her phone. "Is he asleep?" she asked. "In 5 minutes," Ethan said, sitting down next to him and grabbing a bottle of beer from the fridge. "Read him about the pirates," and he passed out. "You're the best," Leela said, clinging to him. "Do you think we're doing well?" "With Liam," Ethan said. "He's eating ketchup with his pasta and drawing dinosaurs. We're clearly doing something right." "Not just with him," Leela said. "With us. With work, with home, with all of it." Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. "I think so," he said. "Sometimes it feels like there's not enough time, but we're holding on, aren't we?" "It's true," said Leela, sipping her wine. "But you seem a bit thoughtful today. What happened?" Ethan shrugged, unsure how to begin. "Nothing special," he said. "I just noticed the way the guy at the supermarket was looking at you when we were there yesterday." Leela rolled her eyes. "Seriously, Ethan," she said. "This topic again. He was probably just looking for the cash register." "I don't know," Ethan said, looking into the bottle. "You're beautiful, Leela. People notice. I just don't always know what to do about it." Leela put the glass on the table and turned to face him. "Ethan, I'm with you," she said. "And that little dinosaur up there. I don't care who's watching. You know that, right?" "I know," Ethan said, forcing a smile. "I just sometimes catch myself thinking that you could be with someone. I don't know, Cooler." "Cooler?" Leela said, laughing. "You write articles that thousands of people read, and you have a son who thinks you're a superhero. It couldn't be any cooler." Ethan laughed, feeling the tension melt away. "Okay, you're right," he said. "But if anyone starts hitting on me, I'll kill them." "Agreed," said Leela, kissing him. "But only if I don't kill him first." They turned on the TV, choosing an old sitcom, and watched, huddled together. Ethan had his arm around Leela, and the warmth was comforting. But somewhere deep inside, he still felt a little tremor of anxiety when he remembered the looks other men had given him. He dismissed the thought as just his stupidity. The next morning, Ethan woke up early to drive Liam to soccer practice. Leela stayed home, preparing for a client meeting on Monday. "Dad, I'm going to score a goal," Liam said, sitting in the back seat with the ball in his hands. "Sure you will," Ethan said, looking at him in the mirror. But don't forget to pass. Team play, remember? I remember, Liam said, nodding. Is Mom coming to watch? Maybe next game, Ethan said. She has work today. On the field, Ethan sat in the stands, watching Liam run around with the other kids. His phone beeped a text from Leela. Good luck with training. Don't forget to pick up some milk on the way. Ethan smiled and replied, Will do, boss. After practice, they stopped at the supermarket. While Ethan looked for milk, Liam pulled the cart, humming the theme song. Ethan noticed the man at the checkout glance at Leela as they passed. He was wearing a business suit, holding his phone, and his gaze lingered. Ethan gritted his teeth, but said nothing. Dad, can I have some cookies? Liam asked, pointing to the box of chocolate chips. Only if Mom doesn't find out, Ethan said with a wink. Take it. At home, Leela was working on her laptop in the kitchen. Ethan put the groceries on the table and kissed the top of her head. How was training? She asked, without looking up from the screen. Liam's almost done, Ethan said, unpacking his bags. How about you? Ready for your meeting? Almost, Leela said with a sigh. This client wants to change the entire campaign in 2 days, but I can handle it. You always do well, Ethan said, sitting down next to him. Want to order pizza tonight? We'll let Liam choose. Sounds great, said Leela, smiling. But no anchovies, please. It's a deal, Ethan said. That evening they ate pizza, played a board game with Liam, and watched a cartoon. After Liam fell asleep, Ethan and Leela cleaned the living room. Are you okay? Leela asked, putting the toys in the box. You're quiet today. It's okay, Ethan said with a shrug. Just tired. And I notice people looking at you again. At the supermarket. Leela stopped and looked at him. Ethan, stop, she said. I can't control who looks at me, but I choose you. Every day. Understand? I understand, Ethan said with a sigh. I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you. You won't lose it, Leela said, hugging him. We're a team, remember? Ethan nodded, hugging her back. Their marriage was stable, and they found a balance between work and family. But Ethan knew his jealousy would surface sometimes, and he promised himself he would work on it. He looked at Leela, who laughed as she talked about the new project, and felt that despite everything, they could do it. Ethan Walker sat at his desk in the offices of the Green Bay Post, the online news platform where he had worked for 5 years. It was Monday morning, and the newsroom was buzzing with phones ringing, keyboards clicking, and colleagues discussing headlines. Ethan, now a senior reporter, was preparing to publish his most ambitious story yet, an investigation into the corruption of Congressman David Crow, a powerful Wisconsin politician. He had spent months gathering documents, interviewing insiders, and fact-checking to prove that Crow had used illegal campaign finance schemes. The story would appear on the site's front page and on social media today. Ethan leaned back in his chair, rereading the final version. The headline read, Congressman Crow under attack, illegal campaign money. The copy was supported by scans of financial reports, testimony from anonymous sources, and an analysis he'd cleared with a legal department. He knew the article would cause a firestorm, but he was confident in every word. Ethan, ready? Asked Clara, the investigation's editor, peering through the partition. She was a small woman in her 40s with a sharp gaze and a habit of chewing on a pencil. Yeah, Ethan said, nodding. I checked everything. The lawyers gave the go-ahead. We can publish. Okay, Clara said, adjusting her glasses. But you realize this isn't just an article? Crow is a big shot. He has friends everywhere, including our board of directors. I understand, Ethan said with a shrug. But facts are facts. He took money through shell companies. I can't ignore that. Clara nodded, but her face was serious. Just be prepared for the consequences, she said. Greg's already on edge. He called me yesterday, asking if we could delay publication. Ethan frowned. Greg Lawson, the editor-in-chief of the Green Bay Post, was his boss. But their relationship had never been easy. Greg preferred safe topics like local festivals and sports, while Ethan's investigations often gave him headaches. Ethan suspected that Greg was supporting Crow, but he had no proof. "He can't stop it," Ethan said. "We've already agreed on this. If he wants, he can explain to the council why we're hiding the truth." "Okay," Clara said, smiling. "You're stubborn, Walker. We'll publish at 10. I'll post it on social media." Ethan went back to his laptop, checking his email. Leela, his wife, had texted him, "Good luck with your article. Don't forget to pick up Liam from daycare today." He smiled and replied, "Thank you, I won't forget. Love you." Leela worked at a digital marketing agency and was always supportive, even when he stayed up late researching. Their marriage to their son, Liam, was stable, although Ethan sometimes felt jealous when other men paid attention to Leela. He shook the thought aside and focused on his work. At exactly 10 o'clock, the article appeared on the site. Ethan refreshed the page and saw the view counter begin to climb. He opened the Green Bay Post's Twitter account, where Clara had posted a link with the caption, "Shocking revelations about Congressman Crow. Read it now." Within minutes, the tweet had garnered dozens of retweets and comments. Some wrote, "Finally the truth," while others cried, "This is slander." Ethan smiled. The reaction was exactly what he had expected. "Ethan, my office," came Greg Lawson's voice. He stood in the doorway of his office, arms crossed. His face was red, and his tone was foreboding. Ethan sighed, closed his laptop, and followed him. Greg's office was littered with papers, and there were photos of local politicians on the wall, including David Crow. Ethan sat down in his chair, bracing himself for the scolding. "What are you doing, Walker?" Greg said, slamming the door. "I told you to hold off on that article. Do you have any idea what you've gotten us into?" "I know what I wrote is true," Ethan said, looking him in the eye. "Crow was stealing money through shell companies. I have documents, witnesses, everything is verified. What was I supposed to do? Hide it?" Greg slammed his fist on the table. "You should have cleared this with me," he said. "Crow isn't just some minor bureaucrat. He's a congressman. He's connected. You think he'll just swallow this?" "If he's innocent, let him sue," Ethan said with a shrug. "I'm prepared to answer for every word." "Don't be naive," Greg said, lowering his voice. "This isn't just about the court. We have sponsors, a board of directors who don't want any trouble. You're putting the entire editorial team at risk." "What? Should we just keep quiet?" Ethan said, leaning forward. "We're journalists, Greg. Our job is to tell the truth, not hide because someone important might get offended." Greg shook his head as he sat down at the table. "You don't understand how this works," he said. "I know Crow. He's not a bad guy. He may have done something wrong, but that's no reason to have a public execution." "Not a bad guy?" Ethan asked, raising his voice. "He stole money that was supposed to go to schools, roads, hospitals. That's not wrong. That's a crime." "Watch your tone," Greg said, narrowing his eyes. "I'm your boss, remember. And I'm telling you, you crossed a line. There will be consequences, Ethan, for you and the editor." "What consequences?" Ethan said, crossing his arms. "Fire me? For doing my job?" "Don't tempt me," Greg said. "I'm just warning you for now. But if Crow starts pushing, I won't cover for you, and neither will the board." Ethan gritted his teeth, but said nothing. He knew Greg wasn't bluffing. He had connections to the local elite, and he'd stop stories that might hurt his friends. But Ethan wasn't going to back down. "Okay," Ethan said, standing up. "Do what you want, but the article stays. And if Crow tries anything, I'll find more dirt." "Don't dig yourself a hole," Greg said, watching him go. "That's my last piece of advice." Ethan walked out of his office, feeling the blood pounding in his temples. He returned to his desk, opened Twitter, and saw that the tweet about the article had already garnered hundreds of retweets. The comments ranged from praise to threats, but Ethan didn't care. He'd done his job, and that was all that mattered. "Hey, are you okay?" Clara asked. approaching his desk. You look like you're ready to punch a wall. Greg's mad, Ethan said, leaning back in his chair. He says I got us into trouble. He's threatening consequences. He's always like that, Clara said, shrugging. Remember my article about the mayor's office? He screamed for 3 weeks, but then everything calmed down. The main thing is that you have facts. My facts are ironclad, Ethan said. But Greg is clearly on Crow's side. I wouldn't be surprised if they were friends. Maybe so, Clara said, lowering her voice. But you're not alone. I'll support you, and so will the legal department. Just keep a cool head. Thanks, Ethan said, smiling. I'll go get some coffee. Want some? No, I'm already on my 3rd cup, said Clara, laughing. Go get some fresh air. Ethan grabbed his jacket and walked out of the office. It was chilly outside, and he headed to the coffee shop across the street. While he waited for his black coffee, his phone beeped. It was a text from Leela. I read your article. You're awesome, but be careful, okay? Ethan responded. Thanks, I've got it under control. Love you. He knew Leela cared about him, especially when his investigations involved powerful people. Back in the office, Ethan noticed his coworkers whispering and glancing at him. One of them, a new intern named Mike, approached his desk. Ethan, did you write about Crow? Mike asked, his eyes wide. Everyone on Twitter is talking about it. Aren't you afraid he'll sue? Let him try, Ethan said, opening his laptop. I have everything documented. What do you think? I think it's cool, Mike said. But my uncle works in Crow's office. He says he's already going nuts, calling lawyers together. Let him collect it, Ethan said with a shrug. If he's innocent, he has nothing to fear. Mike nodded and left, and then went back to work. He began to look through new emails from sources promising more information about Crow. One of them, anonymous, wrote, check out his connections to Bayshore Invest. More there. Ethan made a note and decided to do it tomorrow. By the end of the day, the article had tens of thousands of views, and the hashtag #CrowCorruption was trending on Wisconsin Twitter. Ethan felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. He knew he had done the right thing, but Greg's words about the consequences kept coming back to him. At 5 o'clock in the evening, he packed his things and went to pick up Liam at the preschool. His son ran out to meet him, waving a drawing. Dad, look, I drew a car, Liam said, jumping up and down. Nice car, Ethan said, picking him up. Let's go home and tell Mom. At home, Leela was cooking dinner, baked chicken and potatoes. She met them in the hallway, hugging Liam. How is my artist? She asked, kissing her son on the forehead. I drew a car, Liam said, showing the drawing. Cool, Leela said, smiling. Go wash your hands. Dinner's almost ready. Liam ran away and Leela turned to Ethan. So, star of journalism, she said, hugging him. Your article is everywhere. I saw Twitter. People are going crazy. Yeah, Ethan said, setting his backpack down. But Greg's not happy. He yelled at me today. Seriously? Leela said, frowning. Why? It's your job. Because Crow's his buddy, Ethan said, sitting down at the kitchen table. Or maybe he's just scared of his own skin. He threatened to retaliate. What consequences? Leela asked, setting down the plates. He can't fire you for telling the truth. I don't know, Ethan said with a shrug, but I won't back down. If Crow is guilty, he must answer. Leela looked at him, her eyes serious. I'm proud of you, she said. But Ethan, be careful. Crow is no joke. He has a lot of money and power. I know, Ethan said, taking her hand. But I can't keep quiet. It wasn't me. Okay, Leela said, squeezing his hand. Just don't take too many risks, okay? Liam and I need you. I promise, Ethan said, smiling. Liam came running back, and they sat down to dinner. Ethan listened to his son talk about his day at preschool, and Leela shared news about her project for a new client. Ethan Walker sat at the kitchen table in his Green Bay home, sipping his morning coffee. It was 7 p.m. on a Saturday, and Liam, their 5-year-old son, was already watching cartoons in the living room, munching on toast. Leila Morgan, Ethan's wife, stood at the sink, checking her phone. Today was a big day for her, the annual marketing conference in Milwaukee, where she was to be honored for the best digital campaign of the year. Ethan had promised to go with her to support her, and had even arranged for his brother, Matt, to babysit Liam. "Are you ready for my big day?" Leila asked, still glued to her phone. She was wearing a sweater and jeans, but had already applied makeup that accentuated her brown eyes. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a high ponytail. "Of course," Ethan said, setting his mug down. "You're going to be a star. I can just picture you holding that award and thanking me in your speech." Leila rolled her eyes but smiled. "Dream on," she said, sitting down opposite. "I just want it to go smoothly. This campaign for an eco-friendly brand was my best work. If I win an award, it could open new doors at the agency." "You'll get it," Ethan said, taking her hand. "You're a marketing genius. I'll just sit in the audience and clap louder than anyone else." "You better not be late," Leila said, squeezing his hand. "The conference starts at noon, the awards ceremony at 3. We need to leave by 10. "Got it, boss," Ethan said, raising his mug. "I'll even put on a jacket. Just don't make me tie a tie." "You can do without a tie," said Leila, laughing. "But it looks decent. All my colleagues and the boss will be there." Liam ran into the kitchen waving a plastic dinosaur. "Mom, will you win the prize?" he asked, climbing onto the chair. "I hope so, baby," Leila said, ruffling his hair. "And you'll be good at Uncle Matt's?" "Yes," Liam said. "He promised pizza." Ethan laughed. "Now that's motivation," he said. "Okay, I'm going to take a shower. I need to look worthy of your reward." He stood up, kissed Leila on the cheek, and headed upstairs. But his phone, lying on the table, rang. Leila looked at the screen. "It's Greg," she called. "Your boss. Should I answer?" "Shit," Ethan muttered, turning back. "Let me do it." He took the phone and walked out into the living room so Liam wouldn't hear. "Greg, what happened?" Ethan said, trying to sound calm. "After the publication of an article about the corruption of Congressman David Crow, which caused a stir on social media, relations with Greg Lawson, the editor-in-chief of the Green Bay Post, had become even more tense. Greg was angry that Ethan had not listened to him and released the investigation. "Walker, I need you in the office," Greg said, his voice sharp. "Right now." "Now," Ethan said, frowning. "Greg, it's Saturday. I have plans. I can't." "This isn't a request," Greg said. "We have an urgent assignment. A local festival in Appleton. We need to cover it. No one else is available." "A festival?" Ethan said, raising his voice. "Is this a joke? Send an intern. I have a family business." "Don't argue," Greg said. "You crossed the line with that article about Crow. The board is pressuring me, and I'm not going to cover for you if you don't do what I say. Want to keep your job? You'll be at the festival. By noon." Ethan gritted his teeth, feeling anger boiling. He knew this was punishment for the article. Greg was an ally of Crow's and made no secret of his irritation. "Greg, I promised my wife I'd be at her awards ceremony," Ethan said, trying to contain himself. "This is important. I can't throw it all away." "Your wife will survive," Greg said, "but your career won't. The choice is yours. If you don't come, you can look for a new place." Ethan wanted to hang up, but he held back. He knew Greg wasn't bluffing. Quitting meant losing his steady income, and with Liam and a mortgage, that wasn't an option. "Okay," he said through clenched teeth, "I will." "That's a smart girl," Greg said. "The secretary has your festival pass. Don't be late." He hung up and Ethan stared at the phone, fighting the urge to throw it at the wall. He walked back into the kitchen where Leila was making Liam more toast. "What did Greg want?" she asked, noticing his face. Ethan sat up, rubbing his temples. "He wants me to cover some stupid festival in Appleton," he said. "Today, By noon. Leela froze, her eyes narrowed. Today, she said. Ethan, you promised to be at the conference. This is my day. You can't miss it. I know, Ethan said, looking at the table, but Greg's threatening to fire me if I don't go. It's because of the Crow article. He's getting revenge. Revenge? Leela said, raising her voice. And you just go along with it? Can't you tell him to shove his festival away? Leela, it's not that simple, Ethan said, standing up. If I lose my job, what are we going to do? We have Liam, the house, the bills. What about me? Leela said, crossing her arms. This is my reward, Ethan. I've been working on this for months. You promised to be there. I know I promised, Ethan said, his voice shaking. But I can't risk losing my job. It won't be long. I'll be back this evening and we'll celebrate. Leela shook her head, her face stony. Celebrate? She said. Are you serious? I want you there when I get the award, not drinking beer at home afterwards. Mom, Dad, don't fight, Liam said, looking at them with concern. It's okay, baby, Leela said, softening her tone. Go watch cartoons. Liam reluctantly left, and Leela turned to Ethan. It's not fair, she said, lowering her voice. You always put work first. I supported you with that article, even when you knew it would cause trouble. And now I have to go to my conference alone. I don't put the job first, Ethan said, walking toward her. I do this for us. If I get fired, we're screwed. For us? Leela said, pulling away. That sounds like an excuse. You could have told Greg you had a family, but you chose him. I didn't choose him, Ethan said, clenching his fists. I'm trying to preserve everything we have. You don't understand how this works. Oh, I understand, Leela said, her voice cold. I understand that you don't keep your word. Go to your festival, Ethan. I can handle myself. She turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving him alone. Ethan watched her go, his stomach clenching. He wanted to run after her, but he knew it wouldn't make any difference. He glanced at his watch. It was an hour's drive to Appleton, and he needed to get ready. Liam, I'll be right back, he called, putting on his jacket. Be good to Uncle Matt. Okay, Dad, Liam replied from the living room. Ethan got out, got in his car, and drove to the office to get his pass. The newsroom was empty except for the secretary, who handed him a badge for the festival. Ethan glanced at it. Appleton Apple Festival. Press. He shook his head. It was a small thing, usually assigned to interns, not senior journalists. Greg was clearly trying to humiliate him. On the way to Appleton, Ethan called Matt. Hey, brother, Matt said, answering. What's wrong? I thought you were going with Leela. Change of plans, Ethan said, gripping the wheel. Greg made me work. Can you pick Liam up by 10? Sure, Matt said, but Leela's probably furious. That's putting it mildly, Ethan said. She thinks I let her down. Well, you did promise, Matt said, but I get it. Greg's a jerk. What kind of job is this? Some kind of festival, Ethan said. Apples, pies, that sort of thing. Total nonsense. Huh, that sounds like a punishment, Matt said. Okay, I'll take Liam. Good luck with Leela. She'll bounce back. I hope so, Ethan said, hanging up. The festival was in full swing when Ethan arrived. Families were wandering among the tents, kids were eating cotton candy, and a local band was playing something fun. Ethan took a few photos, talked to the organizer, and jotted down quotes for the article. It all took less than an hour. He knew he could have been with Leela, but instead he was stuck there because of Greg. He sent Leela a message. I'll finish. I can still come for the awards. Sorry. There was no response. Ethan sighed and continued working, but his thoughts were in Milwaukee. Meanwhile, Leela sat in a Milwaukee hotel conference room, listening to a speaker. The room was full of marketers, her colleagues were whispering about her campaign, and her boss, sitting next to her, was complimenting her work. But Leela felt abandoned. Ethan should have been there, holding her hand, smiling as she accepted her award. Instead, he had chosen work, and it hurt. "Are you okay?" asked her colleague Sarah, noticing her frowning face. "Yeah," Leela said, forcing a smile. "It's just, Ethan couldn't make it. His boss made him work." "Seriously," Sarah said, frowning. "It's your day. Couldn't he refuse?" "I guess not," Leela said, looking at the stage. "His boss threatened to fire him. But still, I thought he'd find a way." "Guys," Sarah said, rolling her eyes, "mine does that too. But shine. This award is yours." Leela nodded, but inside she was hurting. She checked her phone, a text from Ethan. She didn't answer, too angry to text. She wished he was here, not sending an apology. By 3 o'clock, Ethan was done with the festival and had written a short note for the website. He got in his car, deciding to drive to Milwaukee after all, but he knew he wouldn't make it in time for the awards. He called Leela, but she didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Leela, I'm done. I'm on my way to you. I'm sorry I screwed up." He knew it wasn't enough, but he hoped she'd understand. That evening, when Ethan returned home, he found Leela in the living room. Liam was already asleep and Matt had left. On the table was her award, a glass statuette engraved with the words, "Best Campaign 2025. "Congratulations," Ethan said, "sitting down next to you. I knew you'd win." Leela looked at him, her eyes cold. "Thank you," she said, her voice even. "It's a shame you weren't there." "Leela, I tried," Ethan said, taking her hand. "Greg left me no choice. I didn't want to let you down." "But you did," Leela said, snatching her hand away. "This was my moment, Ethan, and you were somewhere at the festival because you couldn't tell your boss no." "If I'd said no, I'd have been fired," Ethan said, raising his voice. "You want us to lose the house? You want Liam to lose his daycare?" "Don't make me out to be the villain," Leela said, standing up. "I wanted you to be with me, but you chose Greg and his stupid job." "I chose our family," Ethan said, standing up as well. "You don't understand what's at stake." "I know I feel alone," Leela said, her voice shaking. "Good night, Ethan." Leela Morgan sat at a round table in the ballroom of the Milwaukee Hilton, clutching a glass of champagne. The annual marketing conference was in full swing, and she had just accepted an award for the best digital campaign of the year. Her colleagues clapped, her boss shook her hand, and the room roared with applause. But Leela felt empty. Ethan Walker, her husband, should have been there, smiling and proud of her. Instead, he was covering some stupid festival in Appleton because his boss, Greg Lawson, had decided to punish him. Their argument from that morning was still burning, and Leela hadn't returned his texts or calls. "Leela, you're glowing," said Sarah, her colleague sitting next to her. She raised her glass. "To you and your award." "Thank you," Leela said, forcing herself to smile and clink glasses. "It's been a long journey." "It took a long time, but you did it," Sarah said. "It's a shame Ethan didn't come. He'd be bursting with pride." "Yes," Leela said, her voice even. "He had work. He couldn't get out." Sarah frowned, but didn't press. "Well then, we'll celebrate for him," she said. "More champagne." "Why not?" said Leela, holding out the glass. After the ceremony, the room transformed into a cocktail party. Marketers dressed in suits and dresses mingled, exchanging business cards and discussing trends. Leela, in the black dress she'd picked out especially for the evening, stood at the bar, nursing her third drink. She knew it was time to stop, but the alcohol dulled the pain of Ethan's absence. "Leela Morgan, I didn't expect you here," a deep voice said behind her. She turned to see David Crow, a congressman from Wisconsin. He was wearing a navy suit with neatly coiffed hair and a charming smile. His face was familiar, and not just from the news. They had dated a few years ago, before she met Ethan, when Leela volunteered for his campaign. Their brief affair lasted a couple of months, but ended when she left politics. "David," Leela said, raising an eyebrow, "what are you doing here?" "Sponsoring the conference," Crow said, ordering a whiskey from the bartender. "Looking for new talent for my team. And I heard you won an award. Congratulations. Thank you, Leela said, sipping her champagne. I didn't think you followed marketing. I keep an eye on everything that's going on in the state, Crow said, smiling. Especially stars like you. Can I sit down? Leela shrugged. Of course, she said, pointing to an empty chair. Crow sat up, his gaze attentive but not intrusive. So, he said, taking a sip of whiskey. How are you? I heard you're married. Do you have a son? Yes, Leela said, looking into her glass. Liam's 5. And Ethan. He's a journalist. A journalist, Crow said, his tone sharpening slightly. I wonder, is he the guy who wrote that Green Bay Post article about me? Leela tensed. She knew about Ethan's investigation that had exposed Crow's corruption, but she hadn't expected it to come out here. It's his job, she said, trying to sound neutral. He writes the truth. True, said Crow, grinning. Funny how the truth depends on who writes it. But I hold no grudge. How about you? Are you happy with your life? Leela looked at him, feeling the champagne go to her head. Mostly, she said. Work is going well. Liam is my world. But there are tough days. Like today, Crow said, leaning closer. I heard from Greg Lawson that your husband missed your big moment. That must be a shame. Leela frowned. Greg, Ethan's boss, knew Crow, and they discussed her personal life. How do you know? She asked, her voice cold. Greg's an old friend, Crow said with a shrug. He mentioned that Ethan was busy with some festival. Too bad he's not here. You deserve better. Leela clutched her glass, her resentment towards Ethan flaring up with renewed vigor. It's none of your business, she said, but her voice wavered. Maybe not, Crow said, softening his tone. But I remember you, Leela. You were always special. And honestly, I missed our conversations. Leela looked at him. His eyes were warm, and for a second she remembered their meetings years ago, the dinners, the laughter, the feeling that she was important. She shook the memory away. It was a long time ago, she said, finishing her champagne. I'm different now. Not exactly, Crow said, ordering her another drink. You're still the same Leela who's not afraid to be herself, and you shouldn't be alone on a night like this. The bartender put out a new glass, and Leela, without thinking, took it. I'm not alone, she said, but her voice was weak. I have Ethan. Ethan, who chose the job over you, Crow said, his tone gentle but cutting. I wouldn't make that mistake. Leela wanted to protest, but the words stuck. She drank some more, feeling the hurt and alcohol mixing. Crow began talking about old times, about the campaign they had worked on together, and Leela found herself laughing. He was as charming as ever, and for a moment she forgot about her fight with Ethan. Remember that night in Madison? Crow said, smiling. We danced at that bar until midnight. Yes, said Leela, giggling. I nearly broke my heel that time. You were the best on the dance floor, Crow said. Want to do it again? There's music. Leela glanced at the room where several couples were dancing to a live jazz band. I'm not sure, she said, but Crow was already standing, holding out his hand. One dance, he said, for old time's sake. She hesitated, but took his hand. They walked out onto the dance floor, and Crow led her confidently. Leela could feel the eyes of her colleagues, but the alcohol dulled her awkwardness. After the dance, Crow suggested another drink, and they returned to the bar. The hour flew by, and Leela realized that she had drunk more than she had planned. I guess I should go, she said, standing up, but she swayed. Careful, Crow said, steadying her. Let me walk you to your room. I don't want you to fall. Leela wanted to refuse, but her head was spinning. Okay, she said, but only to the door. They took the elevator up, and Crow walked her to her room on the 6th floor. At the door, Leela turned to him. Thank you, she said. It was unexpected. Please, Crow said, his voice low. Leela, you deserve to be treasured. If Ethan can't see that, it's his fault. He stepped closer, and Leela froze. She knew she should move away, but the hurt she felt toward Ethan, the alcohol, and Crow's gaze held her there. He leaned in, and she didn't stop him. Their kiss was brief, but Leela felt her insides twist. "I shouldn't," she said, pulling away. "Then tell me to leave," Crow said, looking into her eyes. Leela was silent, and he followed her into the room, closing the door. She knew it was a mistake, but at that moment she didn't care. They had spent the night together, and Leela, overcome by resentment and alcohol, hadn't thought about the consequences. Crow, unnoticed by her, had placed his phone on the nightstand, turning on the recorder, planning to use the video against Ethan, whose article threatened his career. In the morning, Leela woke up with a headache and guilt. Crow had already left, leaving a note. "Thanks for tonight, I'll call." She grabbed her phone, hoping Ethan hadn't called, but saw his missed calls and voicemail. She didn't listen, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. What had she done? "Leela, where are you?" Sarah's voice rang out, knocking on the door. "Breakfast is in half an hour." "I'm coming," Leela called, wiping her eyes. She took a quick shower, changed into jeans and a sweater, and went down to the restaurant. Sarah was sitting at a table with her colleagues. "You look tired," Sarah said, pushing the coffee toward her. "Were you out partying all night?" "Something like that," Leela said, taking a sip. "I just drank too much." "Yeah, I saw you with that politician," Sarah said, lowering her voice. "Crow, huh? You were dancing. What's the story?" "Nothing special," said Leela, avoiding her gaze. "Just an old acquaintance. We were chatting." "Well, he was obviously delighted," Sarah said with a wink. "But I'm not a gossip. Your secret is safe." Leela forced herself to smile, but inside she was clenching. She wanted to call Ethan, to apologize for the fight, but the thought of what she had done stopped her. She knew she should tell him, but she couldn't find the words. "Are you going home today?" Sarah asked, changing the subject. "Yes," said Leela, "after lunch." "Okay," Sarah said. "Call me if anything happens. And congratulations again." Leela nodded, finishing her coffee. She went back to the room, gathered her things, and sat on the bed, looking at her phone. Ethan had sent another text. "I'm home. Call when you're ready." She wanted to answer, but instead she began to cry, feeling the guilt tear through her. Meanwhile, in Green Bay, Ethan sat in the living room playing with cars with Liam. He tried not to think about the fight, hoping that Leela would calm down when he got back. Ethan Walker sat in his Green Bay living room, phone in hand. It was Sunday morning, and the house was quiet. Liam, their 5-year-old son, was still asleep, and Leela Morgan, his wife, had just returned from a marketing conference in Milwaukee and was upstairs taking a shower. Their fight over Ethan missing her awards show still hung in the air. Leela was barely speaking to him, and Ethan felt her withdrawing. He opened his email to distract himself, but a new message from an unknown address stopped him in his tracks. The subject line read, "Watch this, Walker," from David Crow, the congressman whose corruption Ethan had exposed in a recent article. Ethan frowned and opened the email. Inside was a video file and the text, "You shouldn't have come at me." He clicked on the video without thinking, and a second later his heart stopped. On the screen was Leela in a hotel room with Crow. They were intimate, and there was no doubt what was happening. Ethan turned off the video after 10 seconds, feeling the blood pounding in his temples. His hands were shaking, and there was a lump in his throat. Leela had cheated on him. With Crow, of all people. "No," he muttered, throwing the phone on the couch. He stood up, pacing the room, trying to breathe. This couldn't be real, but the video was real, and Crow had sent it to hit him where it hurt. Ethan grabbed his phone, his fingers hovering over the Twitter share button. He wanted to post the video so the world could see what Crow had done to his family. He wanted to humiliate Leela the way she had humiliated him. But something stopped him. He thought of Liam, asleep upstairs, and how this video would ruin his life. He thought of Leela, in pain, and how she might not know about the recording. He gritted his teeth, resisting the urge to press the button. He needed advice. He dialed Matt, his older brother, who lived half an hour away. "Hey, what's wrong?" Matt replied, his voice sleepy. "It's early." "Matt, I need to talk," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "Can you come over? Right now." "Seriously?" Matt said, but he heard his brother's tone. "Okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Hang in there." Ethan hung up and sat on the couch, looking at his phone. He didn't turn the video back on, but the images still lingered in his mind. He could hear Leela's footsteps upstairs and knew he couldn't talk to her now. He felt betrayed, crushed, and didn't trust himself not to explode. Matt arrived sooner than he'd promised, wearing jeans and an old t-shirt. His dark hair was tousled, but his eyes were worried. "What happened?" he said, walking in. "You look like you've been run over by a truck." Ethan pointed at the phone. "Look," he said, his voice hoarse. "Crow sent me a video. Leela, with him." Matt frowned, picked up his phone, and opened the email. He glanced at the first few seconds of the video and immediately turned it off. "Shit," he said, sitting down next to her. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. That's mean." "Despicable," Ethan said, raising his voice. "She cheated on me, Matt, with that bastard who wants to destroy me. I want to put it on Twitter so everyone can see what they did." Matt put his hand on his shoulder. "Hey, breathe," he said. "I know you're mad, but you can't put this out there. Think about Liam. He's 5. Do you want him to grow up knowing this video is on the internet? And Leela, she may be guilty, but this will destroy her." "She ruined me," Ethan said, jumping up. "She knew what she was doing, and Crow knew. He sent this to kill me for the article." "And you're going to let him win," Matt said, looking him in the eye. "If you put that out there, Crow will get what he wants. He wants you to break. Don't do it, brother. You're stronger." Ethan paced the room, clenching his fists. "Then what should I do?" he said. "Just swallow it. Forgive her." "I'm not saying forgive," Matt said. "I'm saying don't let Crow control you. Hit him where he's weak. You're a journalist. Use that." Ethan paused, his thoughts beginning to clear. Matt was right. It would be easy to release the video, but it would destroy his family. Crow deserved to be punished, but not like this. Ethan remembered the anonymous email he'd received last week, with new information about Crow's corruption. He could use it to destroy his career. "You're right," Ethan said, sitting up. "I won't post the video, but I'll kill him. I have something new on him. I'll write a new article." "That's my brother," Matt said, clapping him on the shoulder. "But what about Leela? Will you talk to her?" Ethan shook his head. "Not now," he said. "I can't. I need time." "Okay," Matt said. "If you want, come see me. You can take Liam. Give yourself a couple of days." "Maybe," Ethan said, looking at the floor. "Thank you for coming." "Always," Matt said, standing up. "Call me if anything happens, and don't do anything stupid." Matt left, and Ethan was alone. He heard Leela coming down the stairs, but he didn't turn around. She walked into the living room, wearing jeans and an old Nirvana t-shirt, her hair wet from the shower. "Good morning," she said, her voice cautious. "Is Liam still asleep?" "Yeah," Ethan said, not looking at her. He stood up, picked up his laptop, and headed for the door. "I need to get to the office." "To the office?" Leela said, frowning. "It's Sunday. What happened?" "Work," Ethan said, his voice cold. "Back later." He walked out before she could answer. In the car, he turned on the radio to drown out his thoughts, but the pain from the video didn't go away. He knew he had to talk to Leela, but not now. He'd deal with Crow first. The Green Bay post office was empty except for the editor on duty. Ethan sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and found an email from an anonymous source. It contained details about a company called Bayshore Invest, through which Crow had laundered money for his campaign. Ethan began writing a new story, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He collected all the evidence: wire transfers, correspondence, insider testimony. By lunchtime, the draft was ready. He called Clara, his investigative editor. Clara, I have a new article, he said. About crows. I want to publish it tomorrow. Seriously, Clara said, her voice surprised. You're not wasting any time. What is it? Bayshore Invest, Ethan said. They were laundering money for his campaign. I have the paperwork. It's all checked out. Damn it, Ethan, Clara said. This is going to blow everything up. But Greg's going to be furious. He's already on edge after your first article. I don't care about Greg, Ethan said. It's true. Are you with me? Of course, said Clara. Send me a draft. I'll check with the lawyers. Ethan sent the file and began preparing a series of tweets. He wrote the first. New revelations about David Crow. Bayshore Invest is the key to his corruption. Read tomorrow in the Green Bay Post. He attached a screenshot of the wire transfer, with sensitive data blacked out. The second was more blunt. Crow thought he was hiding the money. We found it. #Crow corruption. He planned 3 more tweets to drum up interest. He came home in the evening. Leela was cooking dinner. Liam was drawing at the table. She looked at him, but her gaze was wary. You took a long time, she said. Everything okay? No, Ethan said, setting his backpack on the floor. But I don't want to talk. Not now. Ethan, what's going on? Leela said, coming closer. You've been quiet all day. Is it because of yesterday? Leela, just. Give me time, he said, looking away. I have to work. She wanted to object, but Liam ran up, showing the drawing. Dad, look, it's a rocket, he said. Great job, champ, Ethan said, forcing a smile. I'm going to take a shower. He went upstairs, avoiding Leela. The evening passed in silence. They talked only about Liam. Ethan couldn't look her in the eye, afraid that he would lose it. The next morning, the article came out. The headline read, Crow and Bayshore Invest, New Evidence of Corruption. Ethan's tweets went viral, and the hashtag #CrowCorruption began trending again. By midday, local TV stations had picked up the story, and by evening, national ones. Social media was buzzing, with some calling for Crow's resignation and others calling Ethan a hero. But Greg was waiting for him in the newsroom. What are you doing, Walker? Greg said, bursting into his desk. I told you not to mess with Crow. I'm doing my job, Ethan said, not standing up. Do you have any objections to the facts? Facts, Greg said, his face turning red. You're destroying our reputation. Sponsors are calling, threatening to leave. This is on you. Have them call Crow, Ethan said. He's a thief. I just showed it. You've gone too far, Greg said, lowering his voice. This isn't over. You'll regret it. He left, and Ethan opened Twitter. The news came. Crow's party had expelled him, and his major donors had pulled their support. His career was ruined. Ethan felt a cold satisfaction, but it didn't numb the pain of Leela's betrayal. He knew he still had Crow's video, and it was his weapon. But he decided to answer differently, and now Crow was paying the price. At home, Leela was waiting for him in the living room. Liam was asleep, and she looked tired. Ethan, we need to talk, she said, her voice quiet. What's wrong? You're avoiding me. Ethan looked at her, feeling anger and pain warring inside him. He closed the bedroom door, leaving Leela alone. His victory over Crow was complete, but the pain of his wife's betrayal did not subside. Ethan Walker walked along the path at Lake Mendota Park in Madison, where he and Leela Morgan had first kissed nearly a decade ago. It was 5 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and he had just finished work at the Green Bay Post. The autumn air was cool, the leaves crunched under his feet, but Ethan barely noticed his surroundings. His mind was on Leela and what he was about to tell her. It had been 2 days since David Crow had sent him the video of her cheating on him, and Ethan could no longer keep quiet. He had insisted on meeting here in the park to talk on neutral ground. His heart was pounding with a mixture of anger, hurt, and determination. Leela was already waiting on the bench where they had once sat, chatting until midnight. She was wearing jeans, a black sweater, and an old denim jacket, her blonde hair loose. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes, and Ethan noticed that she was fiddling nervously with her sleeve. When she saw him, she stood up, her face tense. "Ethan," she said, her voice quiet. "Thank you for coming." "Yeah," Ethan said, stopping a few steps away from her. His voice was cold, and he shoved his hands into his jacket pockets to hide the way they were shaking. "Let's talk." Leela nodded, but her eyes glistened with tears. "I know you're angry," she said, looking at the ground. "And you have a reason. I made a terrible mistake." Ethan gritted his teeth, feeling anger boiling up. "A mistake?" he said, his voice sharp. "You slept with Crow, Leela. It's not a mistake. It's a betrayal." Leela shuddered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know," she said, her voice shaking. "I was drunk, mad at you for missing the conference. I wasn't thinking. It was stupid, and I hate myself for it." "Drunk?" Ethan said, raising his voice. "That's your excuse. You knew what you were doing. And to Crow, of all people. Do you even realize he recorded this and sent it to me?" Leela gasped, her eyes widening. "He wrote it down," she said, covering her mouth with her hand. "Ethan, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "It doesn't matter," Ethan said, looking away toward the lake. "You made a choice. You chose him, not me." "No," Leela said, stepping closer. "It's not like that. It was one night, a mistake. I was angry because you didn't come. I felt unwanted. But that doesn't mean I don't love you." Ethan turned to face her, his eyes full of pain. "Do you love me?" he said. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have gone to bed with him. And don't lie, Leela. I know you had a past. You dated him before me, right?" Leela froze, her face turning pale. "Where are you?" she began, but then stopped. "Yes, it's true. We were together for a couple of months before I met you. But that ended. I haven't thought about him in years. And at the conference you suddenly remembered?" Ethan said, his voice full of sarcasm. "Convenient. You knew who he was. You knew he was against me. And you still went with him." "It's not like that," Leela said, her tears flowing faster. "I was drunk, Ethan. He came over, we were talking, and I don't know how it happened. I didn't mean to hurt you. You're everything to me." Ethan shook his head, his face stony. "That's it," he said. "You're indifferent to me, Leela. You always were. I tried to be the best for you, but you don't need that. You chose him because you could, and now I can't look at you." Leela sobbed, her hands shaking. "Please, Ethan," she said, holding out her hand. "Don't say that. We can fix this. I'll do anything to make you forgive me. For Liam, for us." Ethan pulled back, not allowing her to touch him. "Liam," he said, "don't use him as an excuse. I'm not staying with you because of him. I want a divorce, Leela. We're done." Leela gasped, her face contorted in pain. "Divorce?" she said, her voice hoarse. "Ethan, please don't do this. I'm begging you. I know it's my fault, but I love you. Give me a chance." "A chance?" Ethan said, his voice cold. "You got your chance when you said yes at the altar. You blew it. I can't live with that. Every time I look at you, I see that video. I can't." Leela fell onto the bench, covering her face with her hands, her sobs echoing through the park. Ethan stood there, fighting the urge to comfort her. He loved her, despite everything, but the pain was greater. He couldn't forgive. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice quiet. "But this is the end." He turned and walked towards the car without looking back. Leela called after him. "Ethan, please, don't go." But he didn't stop. In the car, he gripped the steering wheel, feeling tears sting his eyes, but he held them back. He knew he had made a choice, and he wasn't going to back down. Ethan went to see his brother Matt, who lived in the suburbs of Green Bay. He had already warned him that he might stay for a couple of days. He decided to leave Liam with Leela for now, so as not to scare his son. Matt met him at the door, holding a beer. "You look like crap," Matt said, ushering him in. "Have you talked to Leela?" "Yeah," Ethan said, throwing his backpack on the floor and sitting down on the couch. I told her I wanted a divorce. She begged me not to leave, but I can't, Matt. Not after this. Matt sighed, sitting down opposite. Damn, brother, he said. I know you're hurt, but are you sure? Divorce is serious. What about Liam? I'm sure, Ethan said, looking at the floor. Liam would be better off with us apart than with a father who can't look at his mother. I won't forgive her. Okay, Matt said, handing him the beer. You can stay here as long as you need. But what now? Have you talked to a lawyer? Not yet, Ethan said, opening the bottle. I'll start tomorrow. I want Liam with me at least half the time. That makes sense, Matt said. And the work? Your crow piece is still going strong. Ethan chuckled, but without joy. Yeah, he said. Today I found out he was expelled from the party. The sponsors are running. He even sued me for slander, but my lawyer says he has no chance. All the evidence is on my side. Good job, Matt said, clapping him on the shoulder. You got him, but that won't bring Leela back. I don't want her back, Ethan said, his voice firm. She made her choice. Now I make mine. Matt nodded without arguing. Ethan stayed with him, taking over the guest room. He focused on his work, publishing new stories and answering media inquiries about Crow. His article had brought him acclaim. Colleagues called him a hero, and his editor, Clara, offered him a promotion. But every night, when he returned to Matt's, he felt lonely. He saw Leela in his memories, her smile on their first date, her laughter as she and Liam played. He pushed the thoughts away, but they kept coming back. Meanwhile, Leela was suffering. Word of her night with Crow had reached her digital marketing agency. Co-workers whispered, clients began asking questions, and her boss implied that her reputation was hurting the company. Unable to handle the pressure, Leela quit, packed her bags, and moved in with her mother in Madison. She took Liam with her, negotiating temporary custody with Ethan via text. Her mother, Patty, tried to console her, but Leela couldn't shake the guilt. Leela, you made a mistake, Patty said over dinner, looking at her daughter. But you can't just give up. Talk to Ethan. He loves you. He doesn't love me, Leela said, her voice hoarse. He wants a divorce, Mom. I saw his eyes. He hates me. He's hurt, Patty said, taking her hand. Give him time. You and Liam are his family. I destroyed our family, Leela said, her tears falling onto the table. He will never forgive. Patty sighed, hugging her. Then start with yourself, she said. Get a job, be strong for Liam. The rest will come. Leela nodded, but she didn't believe it. She knew the gossip would follow her, and she was afraid Ethan would never look at her the same way again. In Green Bay, Ethan met with a lawyer to discuss divorce and custody. He insisted on equal time with Liam and minimal contact with Leela. The lawyer assured him that his position was strong, given the circumstances. Are you sure you want to go through with it? The lawyer asked, looking across the table. Divorces with kids can be complicated. I'm sure, Ethan said, his voice firm. I can't stay with her, not after what she did. Okay, the lawyer said, making a note. We'll start the process, but be prepared she may contest custody. Let him try, Ethan said. Liam is my son. I won't give him up. At work, Ethan received a letter from the legal department. Crow's libel suit had been dismissed. The judge had found Ethan's evidence overwhelming, and Crow had been ordered to pay his legal costs. Ethan felt a brief sense of triumph, but it was hollow. He sat at his desk, staring at the screen where his article about Crow was still racking up views. He had been named Journalist of the Year, but that didn't fill the void. That evening, he stopped by Matt's, where Liam was playing with his daughter, his cousin Jessie. Dad, Liam said, running up, we're building a castle. Nice castle, Ethan said, picking it up. How are you, champ? Okay, Liam said, but his eyes were sad. When is Mom coming back? Ethan tensed, not knowing what to answer. Soon, he said, but you'll stay with me and Uncle Matt for now, okay? Okay, Liam said, but his voice was quiet. Matt looked at Ethan as Liam ran off to play. He misses her, Matt said, opening a beer. Have you talked to Leela? No, Ethan said, sitting down. Not without a lawyer. I'm not ready. I understand, Matt said, but it's hard for Liam. Maybe we should at least meet for his sake. Not now, Ethan said, looking into the bottle. I can't see her. Not after that video. Okay, Matt said without pressing. But you know where I am if you change your mind. Ethan nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He remembered their first date, the walk by the lake, Leela's laughter. The memories were like a knife, and he hated himself for still missing her. Ethan Walker sat in his new office at the Green Bay Post, flipping through the click-through reports for his latest stories. It had been nearly a year since he had become the platform's editor-in-chief, and his career was at its peak. His investigations, particularly into the corruption of former Congressman David Crow, had made him a star of Wisconsin journalism. But behind the closed door of his office, Ethan felt empty. His marriage to Leela Morgan had crumbled after she had cheated on him with Crow, and they now communicated only through lawyers negotiating custody of their 5-year-old son, Liam. Ethan saw Liam every other weekend and on Wednesdays, but the boy was suffering from his parents' rift, and it tore at Ethan's heart. He glanced at his phone, where there was a text from his lawyer. Leela has agreed to the proposed custody schedule. Sign the papers by Friday. Ethan replied, Okay, I will. Their conversation was cold and formal, with no hint of the years they had spent together. Ethan didn't want to see her, considering Leela his one true love, but he couldn't forgive the betrayal. He avoided dating, rejecting his colleagues' attempts to set him up with someone. I'm not ready, he said, but deep down he knew that no one could replace Leela. Ethan, are you going to the charity event? Asked Clara, his investigative editor, poking her head into the office. She was holding a coffee and a folder of drafts. What evening? Ethan said, looking up from the screen. The Children's Hospital Foundation, Clara said, sitting down opposite. Today at 7 at the Plaza Hotel. You got an invitation. All our sponsors will be there, plus the local bigwigs. A good chance to make connections. Ethan sighed. He hated these events, but he knew that as editor-in-chief, he had to show up. Okay, he said, but only for a couple of hours. I have to pick up Liam tomorrow morning. Great, Clara said, smiling. And wear something decent, not your usual denim jacket. I can't promise without a denim jacket, Ethan said, grinning. Clara rolled her eyes and left, and then went back to work. He checked Twitter, where his latest article on the local economy was still being discussed. His account now had tens of thousands of followers, and he was used to the attention. But every night, when he returned to his rented apartment, he felt lonely. At 7 o'clock that evening, Ethan walked into the ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, wearing a dark suit and no tie. The room was filled with people in tuxedos and evening gowns, waiters were serving champagne, and a string quartet was playing on stage. Ethan picked up a glass of soda and began to walk around the room, greeting donors and colleagues. He spotted a familiar face in the crowd, David Crow, the former congressman whose career had been ruined by Ethan's investigations. Crow was wearing a gray suit, but he looked shabby, with bags under his eyes. Ethan tensed, but decided to ignore him. Ethan Walker, the hero of the day, Crow said, suddenly approaching. His smile was venomous, and he held a whiskey in his hand. I didn't think you'd stoop to such evenings. Crow, Ethan said, his voice cold. I didn't know you were invited anywhere else. Crow chuckled as he took a sip. I'm still in the game, he said. And you? How are things without Leela? I heard she was here alone. Too bad you lost her. She was special. Ethan gripped his glass, feeling his anger boiling. Crow knew how to hit, bringing up Leela and the night he had recorded to destroy Ethan. You lost, Crow, Ethan said, looking him in the eye. You were kicked out of the party, your sponsors fled, and your libel suit failed. Enjoy your fall. Crow narrowed his eyes, but didn't back down. Maybe so, he said, but at least I got her for one night. And you? You live with it every day. Ethan stepped closer, his fists clenching. One more word and you'll regret it, he said, his voice low. Crow raised his hands, retreating. Okay, okay, he said, grinning. No drama. See you later, Walker. He walked away into the crowd, and Ethan stood there, fighting the urge to catch up. He noticed a few guests looking at him, but he pretended nothing had happened. Clara approached, holding champagne. What was that? She asked, frowning. You looked like you were about to hit him. Crow's trying to play the provocateur, Ethan said, sipping his soda. But he's not worth my time. Okay, Clara said. Don't let him get into your head. By the way, I saw Leela earlier. She was here, presenting some new project. Ethan froze, his heart clenching. Was Leela here? He said, trying to sound indifferent. Alone? Yeah, Clara said, not noticing his tension. She looked good. Said she was working in consulting now. But you knew, right? No, Ethan said, looking into his glass. We're not talking. Clara frowned, but changed the subject. Okay, let's go. I'll introduce you to the new sponsor, she said, leading him away. Ethan spent the rest of the evening on autopilot, but Crow's words and the news about Leela kept coming back to him. Knowing she was alone had been a strange relief, but it had also reinforced his resolve to forget her. She had made her choice, and he wasn't going to look back. Later, at Matt's, where Ethan was still living, he told his brother about the evening. Crow's a scumbag, Matt said, cracking open a beer. Good thing you didn't hit him. But Leela, have you thought about talking to her? Liam asked about her yesterday. Liam always asks, Ethan said, sitting down on the couch. But I can't, Matt. She cheated on me. I don't trust her. I understand, Matt said. But he's suffering. He said yesterday that he wanted you two to be together. Ethan squeezed the bottle, feeling guilty. I know, he said, but I can't pretend for him. Leela and I agreed on custody. He'll be with her half the time. It's better than living a lie. Okay, Matt said without arguing. Just don't shut yourself off completely. You're not dating, you're stuck working. That's not living. This is my life, Ethan said, his voice firm. Leela was my only one. I don't want anyone else. Matt sighed but said nothing. Ethan finished his beer and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. He thought of Leela at their wedding, her smile as she held Liam. He pushed the thoughts away, but they kept coming back. A year passed. Ethan had become a journalistic icon, his articles quoted across the country. He had moved into a new apartment in Green Bay, furnishing it minimally but with room for Liam. He and Leela raised their son with a cool distance. They met only when Liam was handed over, exchanging brief conversations. Has Liam been good? Leela asked one day, picking up her son from his school. She was wearing a business suit, her hair shorter than before. Ethan noticed how she had aged, but her eyes were still the same. Yeah, Ethan said, looking away. He did a project on dinosaurs. He's proud of it. Cool, Leela said, smiling at Liam. Will you show me around the house? Yeah, Liam said, jumping into the car. Leela looked at Ethan, her gaze full of regret. Ethan, she began, but he interrupted. See you in a week, he said as he left. He didn't want to listen. He knew Leela was moving on. She'd started a career in consulting, working with local businesses, and by all accounts, she was doing well. But the regret he saw in her eyes didn't touch him. It was her own fault, he thought. At home, Ethan opened his laptop, checking his email. Clara had sent him an email. You've been nominated for a state journalism award. Congratulations, he smiled, but the joy was fleeting. He opened the photo folder on his computer, where he'd kept old pictures of Leela, their wedding, Liam's first day of preschool, their vacation at the lake. A slight ache tightened his chest, but he closed the folder, repeating to himself, it's her fault. Dad, can I get some pizza? Liam said, running into the room. He had been to Ethan's for the weekend. Of course, champ, Ethan said, standing up. Pepperoni? Yes, Liam said, jumping. Ethan ordered pizza while playing with his son's cars. Liam was his anchor, but Ethan knew the boy was hurting from their breakup. He tried to be a better father, but he couldn't fill the void Leela had left. He didn't regret the divorce, but every look at old photos reminded him of what he'd lost, and he numbed the pain with work and the thought that Leela had destroyed their family. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.